I know I said I was going to record a podcast on Friday, but I went for pints instead. And then the lethargy of going for pints on Saturday meant I did nothing. And then I was going to do it yesterday. As I had to run errands in the city centre. So you know what? I'll go in and I'll find a nice place to perch up with a warm coffee and watch cars go by as I talk absolute drivel. Um, but it was too cold. It was too cold. It was a miserable day yesterday. It was one of those. It was too cold. There was a strong breeze which just cut through you, and it's that damp cold where just like ugh, and it was overcast, and it wasn't raining, but it was a mist in the air, and it was just a shitty day. It's just that shitty time of year. Although today is quite spectacular. Although I'm currently recording this inside, because I've come home from work and I yogged, I showered, and now I'm lying on my bed, struggling to stay awake, because it's Monday and I'm tired. But here I am, recording a podcast for no one other than myself, and maybe the three other people who listen to this. The reason I was going to record the podcast on Friday was because it's nearly, Jesus, I think it's probably 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever. So a while since I recorded, but I was going to do one on Friday due to the pre-season testing for Formula One being complete, and we would have somewhat of a picture as to what's going on in the world of Formula One. But I understand there are people who don't give a flying toss about Formula One, so I'm going to leave the Formula One chat to the very, 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 very end. So if you don't want to listen to it, you can just stop before I start talking about Formula One. So we'll talk about that at the end. It is race week, but anyway, I won't say any more about F1 until the very end. What else? Yeah, pretty quiet week generally, as usual for me with the motor car. Still don't own anything, which is bad actually. Friends I was out with on Friday are car people too, and they were giving me shit for not having a car because I'm coming up on 2 years since I last owned a car. April, in around that time, 2022 was when I sold my Ford Focus, and a couple of months previous I got rid of my E39 5 Series that I had, because I kind of thought, like, I don't need a car quite now, but I'll get something in a while when something pops up, and the market's gone mad and blah blah. You've heard me ramble on about this for ages, but yeah, they were giving me shit because we can't go on any car adventures because I don't have one. Nothing that's worth going on an adventure with, but I really do need to rectify that soon. I just haven't found anything. It's hard to justify buying something for the sake of it when I don't need it. It's just a toy. Anyway, I've rambled on about that topic a long time ago. Soon I will return and I'll be like, hey, I've bought something. But yeah, quieter than that. Anything of interest I saw? Well, today I was driving along the Keys, just before Houston station there, and to my surprise there was a car transporter parked up with a plethora of old interesting stuff on it. Up on the top rack was a canary yellow Alpha Junior, I assume 1300 Junior GT, twin headlight, small coupe thing. I'm sorry, I'm bad with old stuff. I put them all up on my Instagram so you'll see them. And behind that on the top rack was an immaculate first gen Opel Astra GTE, which had a bunch of like rally participation number stickers on its back window. But very tidy. But it looks like it's been enjoyed by whoever did on it. And God knows where all this stuff is going. Hopefully somewhere. I assume some sort of classic car dealer or something either brought them in. They're all well, the ones that had reg plates were UK registered. So hopefully they're all going to someone who's going to give them some TLC and, give them a home that they deserve. Anyway, what else was on the transporter? Bottom rack. Was there anything else on the top rack? I'm jumping out of me. Bottom rack had an Audi 80 Cabrio. Couldn't see what engine was in it, but we'll just assume it's 2.8 and we'll assume it's a Quattro. Were they all Quattro? I don't know. In front of that was an E30. Was that in front of the an E34 and a 535i, which was nice to see. Had a pretty substantial bit of front end damage on the on the driver's side front, but hopefully it'll be repaired. It's not unrepairable, but a pretty decent smack. Then there was an MGB, which I don't give a shit about. And then on the bottom row was a Saab 9000 turbo. Sorry, Saab 900 turbo, in a lovely kind of teal, we shall say. I don't think was there anything else on it. Anyway, look, they're all up on my Instagram. That was interesting to see. Another couple of things I saw today as well. 2 Ferraris. I saw a Roma on Merrion Square. Not Merrion Square, sorry, Fitzwilliam Square. Irish registered. 222 LH222. Don't usually like giving it reg plates, but went to almost a portmanteau. It's nice to see. Almost, not quite. Although I did see there is a Range Rover. I think it's a Range Rover knocking around that has 11 WW11. So it is a portmanteau. Yeah, sorry, it's not very interesting at all. And then I saw another Ferrari which drove past me on Leeson Street. A 599 in what I think was Tour de France blue. I'm colourblind, so don't quote me. But a 599 on Irish plates as well, which is lovely to see. I do love a 599. I think it's a spectacular looking car. And also criticised, and you would think from looking at them in pictures, and criticised at the time when it was launched for being a car that's too wide. Now, it's a wide car for sure, but it wasn't ridiculous when it drove past me. Admittedly, a fleeting pass by, but it didn't appear to be too big for Irish roads, considering every car is gigantic now. Then since I last recorded the podcast, a couple things I've seen. I saw another 190E Cosworth. I posted one of them. I have a actual post on my Instagram page, car_Nosaur, which you already know of, CAR_NOSAUR. I contemplated changing it to Carnosaur, as in like connoisseur, but with car at the end. But I personally find connoisseur one of those impossible words to spell correctly. So I thought people just really wouldn't be able to find it or understand it. But don't steal that. I assume someone has already taken that. It's too obvious of a username. But I saw another 190E Cosworth this time in motion rather than parked up. The one I have posted on my Instagram is a black one. This was a winey red 2.5. The one I saw was 2.3. On shitty German plates, but each to their own. So it's good to see. Good to see a 190E Cosy driving around, and apparently they're common as muck. 2 in the space of like a month I've seen now. And then probably the most lovely thing I saw again, which I posted up on my stories, a Saab 93 Viggen parked outside Ken Lawford Motors there in Harold's Cross, which I quite literally stumbled across on Friday evening. I was out for a few fizzy drinks. Silver, well, they had 2.3 4-cylinder turbo, I think, aren't they? 5-speed manual. Viggen, for anyone who doesn't know, they're Swedish, translated Thunderbolt in English, which gives you an idea of what the remit is of the Viggen. Next morning, I was like, oh, that's Saab 393 Viggen I saw. So I was getting a Google, refresh my memory on the ifs, nots, and have-nots about the Saab 93 Viggen. I stumbled across an article from Evo from, I think it was 2007, titled "The 10 Worst Cars We've Tested in the History of the Magazine," which is a bit harsh. Give it a go yourself to see other cars around it. But they criticised it, I think, for having chronic torque steer. But then another article I stumbled upon as well from the time was from Motor Trend, and they praised it for its crisp turn-in and its supple ride quality. So 2 differing reviews from 2 very different publications from 2 different sides of the Atlantic Ocean. I'd imagine if, as much as I respect Evo, I'd imagine if they drove it again today, they would say it is full of charm and character, and that it rides beautifully compared to modern cars, etc., etc. I also think as well, a lot of cars from that period and before would need reevaluating now on modern tyres, because modern tyre technology has come on leaps and bounds, even in the last decade. Evo should do that, or some sort of publication or successful YouTube channel should take cars that were somewhat criticized in period, but try them on the equivalent modern tire, see what difference it makes to the quality of the product. But yeah, that's all the stuff I kind of saw this week. If I'm thinking of, did I see anything else? I'm sure I did, but I just can't think off the top of my head. Car news. The Renault 5 was launched. Well, the embargo was lifted today. Electric car, yeah, sure, whatever. But it does look good. There's no denying. Clearly, obviously, the title's in the name. It's a throwback to the original Renault 5. But it looks good. It's an EV, so it's the same as every other EV, really. Again, look, I'm not anti-EV, but there's just not much to talk about. It's got a motor. It'll have a range of, they'll claim to be more than what it'll actually do. It'll have a claimed charging rate, which it won't actually be able to do. And it'll depreciate like a stone. And another electric car launched by the same brand, well, the same family of brands, because Renault owned Dacia. The Dacia Spring is being launched in the UK and Ireland this year. Small 4-seat, small battery, small motored electric car, the cheapest electric car, if you consider an AMI not a car. On sale, I think £17,000. I think it's going to be sold for, so about €25,000. Too much money for a vehicle that's, I think they said, with the fastest charging, whatever it is that it can handle, it can go from 15 to 80% in 45 minutes. So I don't know. I can't see the argument for buying one of those. If you really need an electric car, why not buy like a second-hand Zoe for similar money? Or just don't buy an electric car, just buy a small engined, small efficient car. But best of luck to them with that. As with Ineos, well, I think it was leaked because I don't think it's been officially launched, but the Ineos's second car, the Fusilier, to continue their naming of regiments, I suppose, of armies. It's going to be an all electric 4x4. So with the Grenadier being an unlicensed video game version of the Defender, the Fusilier is a unlicensed version of a G-Wagon. Whatever, fucking Sir Radcliffe, Mr. Pro Brexit, who then builds his cars in Graz in Austria, I believe. There you go. In more positive news, Zagato are going to be making rebodied, coachworked Alpine A110s, and they're kind of it's an homage to the Alpine A220, the sports car from the 70s. So the interesting thing about it is it's going to come in two body styles. It'll have a long tail, as the car did in period, the A220, and a short tail. It's cool. It's a funky looking thing. I think Zagato can often be hit and miss when it comes to their designs, but this thing's pretty cool. So if you haven't seen that, it'd be limited run and extremely expensive. But give it a Google if you haven't seen it. The Zagato A110. Lamborghini have been testing something which might come to whatever is going to replace the Huracan. Something called an active wheel carrier. On the rear axle of a Huracan Mule, and basically what it will allow you to do is you'll be able to adjust toe and camber on the fly, which is interesting. Because you think the car industry has it all worked out, and then they come along with stuff like that. It's an interesting new piece of tech to come along from a Lamborghini. So it'll be interesting to see. It'd be nice to see someone test it to see how it works. So I know obviously the new GT3 RS, you can change a lot of stuff on the fly, but it's more to do with kind of suspension stiffness and stuff. So we have to change like geometry on the rear axle. Be interesting. I wonder what they do the same similar things for front axles as well. Anyway, it's an interesting thing. Look it up. They call it the active wheel carrier. Yeah, again, there's not much going on in the motoring world. Well, there's loads of stuff, but nothing you want to hear from me. What other stuff was I going to talk about? Midlife crisis cars. I was wondering, I think this would be a good discussion point, so if anyone wants to message me, slide into my DMs about this one. Can car enthusiasts have a midlife crisis car, or do the midlife crisis car thing? This came into my mind because I was listening to Johnny Smith. He was on some terrible podcast where people have been criticising him because he just recently bought that £1,900 Porsche Boxster, the ghetto Boxster that he calls it. And people are saying it's because he's in his mid to late 40s. And they're saying that, you know, he's having his midlife crisis by buying a Porsche. But I think anyone of any age, if they were offered a sub £2,000 Porsche Boxster, driving Porsche Boxster, they would buy it. But also I was thinking, like, the whole midlife crisis sports car thing is kind of people who aren't into cars decide they need to buy that sports car they never bought and live vicariously, live their youth again. Whereas I think car people can just buy cars at any point in their life, because you buy silly things when you're 20, and you'll probably continue buying silly things while you're still corpus mentis. Now the juxtaposition, that's not the right word, but the flip side of that argument, a friend of mine's father, who's a car nut himself, did a bit of racing back in the day, who is a keen Mercedes enthusiast, especially stuff from the 80s and early 90s. Like, he has a plethora of W124s, and he has a lovely W126 S-Class, amongst other things. He in his early 60s bought, which he couldn't have hit the stereotype hard on the head. He bought a red or 129 S-Class, but he sold it. He only had it for a few months and then sold it on, probably because he realised it looked like he was having a midlife. Yeah, say on the 60s is quite midlife crisis by buying a red sports car. But he's into old Mercs, so I think that's acceptable, and it's not really a midlife crisis. Or is it? You know, did he really need a red convertible in his 60s living in Ireland? Probably not. But let me know what you think about that. This will be a short one because, as you can tell, my enthusiasm is rife. But I feel like I need to do this. I need to create this terrible content. Model cars. They were talking about this on the Collecting Cars podcast recently, and it was brought up by Neil Clifford, who's a legend, who never really got into the whole model car thing, which struck me as a car enthusiast, because I love model cars, I still do. They were a big part of the formulation of my love of cars in my early years. I did do the kits. I built a few. I loved putting the parts together. Never very good at painting the shells. I'm not an artist by any means, but I do, you know, I'm definitely that, whatever that left leaning side of my brain, like I can put together a good doodle, and I have painted some things which weren't terrible in my past. But painting model cars, for some reason, just never worked out for me. But even the, you know, pre-made, just scale model cars, I've always loved. And it's a strange one as well, because like, it's a lot of the stuff I bought would be just purely due to the aesthetics of it. Like, I know the very first 1:18 scale model I bought was a Dodge Viper GTS, simply just because of the way it looks. And I have a stack of them up in my attic. And I always assumed that every car enthusiast started that way, or at least, you know, it was definitely a large part of their youth. but I now believe that's not quite true. So let me know if you like model cars or did collect model cars, or if you just didn't get them at all, like Neil Clifford. Yeah. Okay. Gonna wrap this up. So it's gonna be very short. What will be 20 minutes? 20 minutes in. So I'll round up with my usual. Because I'll talk about F1 after this. So once I finish doing my weekly recommendations, if you don't want to listen to F1, you can just tune out. But if you want to hear some F1 chatter, you can stay listening. So the YouTube channel I'm going to recommend this week is the B for Bravo, B the number 1, B1M, M for Mother. So the B1M. So it's a YouTube channel that talks about large scale engineering projects. It's quite interesting. They have a podcast as well. I only got into it recently, but they've been going for a good few years, so there's a wealth of videos to get through. So if you're a car person, you're probably into engineering as well. So it's well worth a look. Just good, they range from about 10 minutes, and then they've some that go on for over an hour. Check it out if you're into large scale engineering. Some of the stuff's incredible. So check that out. Music. I'm not going to pick a specific song. I'm just going to tell you to remind yourself of how good Pearl Jam are, and just go through the Pearl Jam discography. I bring them up because they're playing Marley Park in the summer, and I got myself a ticket. I say I got my ticket. A friend of mine got the pre-sale code and bought tickets, and I put my name down for one of those tickets. When I say I put my name down, I paid them the money. Going to Pearl Jam in the summer, so just check out Pearl Jam. Although I recommend a movie as well, because obviously it's award season, and there's lots of great movies that are nominated and are winning awards. But one movie that has been overlooked, which I saw the weekend before, The Iron Claw, which is a true story about a family of wrestlers, essentially in America, with a very tragic story. The lead is Zac Efron, and he puts an absolutely incredible performance in. But the movie and the actors and everything have been completely overlooked for any awards. I do think the studios do have to put the movies forward for awards, and I think they're also limited to the amount that they can put forward. And A24, I think, did A24 make... Anyway, A24 did a few movies this year, and I think they put some of their other ones forward ahead of The Iron Claw. But it's a very good film. I'd recommend checking it out. Your man's in it, whose name I forget, the lead guy from The Bear, amongst others. It's a very good movie. It's sad. Does have an happy ending, but happy-ish ending anyway. But it's a true story, and beautifully shot, beautifully acted. Check that out. Now, my classified fund of the week, there is a Saab 9000i CC, which is up for €6,650, which is expensive, but also not outrageous for an old interesting car these days, which appears to be in fantastic condition, with 88,000 miles on it. It's also a car I've seen before. I think I posted it up on my Instagram. I saw it parked up on Hume Street in town. It's the same one that I saw is now for sale. So check that out. It's the only Saab 9000 up on Done Deal at the moment, so check that out. So if you don't want to listen to F1, you can tune out now. And if you are tuning out, then thanks for listening. I love you as always. But if you are into F1, continue listening. So the preseason testing is over, and it looks like not only is, as expected, Red Bull are going to be the competitive force again, but they came out in winter testing with a very radically different car design. They essentially have gone for the zero pod look, not quite in the same style as Mercedes did at the beginning of the cycle of regulations, which they backed away from last year. But this Red Bull has no side pods in the traditional sense. It has a little skinny vertical inlet, similar to something that Ferrari were running last year and again this year. But Ferrari still have a side pod opening above it, whereas this Red Bull doesn't. But then it has these big intakes that are just above and behind the driver's head, kind of behind the halo, which go around the back. Yeah, but the scary thing about them going on this radical design shift, they still seem to be light years ahead. And the murmurs from the teams, they seem to believe not only are they ahead, but they seem to have taken a step forward as well. So yeah, we won't know until the race this weekend exactly where everyone lies, because testing, you don't know anything for sure, because you just don't know what people's engine modes are or what fuel load they're running really. But yeah, it's looking quite ominous that Red Bull and Max are gonna have a very strong season again. And they're also talking about bringing on massive upgrade as early as Japan, which is the 4th race this season, because they've moved Japan further up. So it's in the spring rather than monsoon season. Yeah, so we should see. Now the thing is as well, murmurs, again, we can't know for sure, but murmurs from the paddock as well is that when you crunch the numbers and go like for like, it seems like Perez is like 0.6 of a second behind Max in pace from what we've seen from testing, which, if they are going to be leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the grid, it'd be nice if they had a second driver that could at least challenge Max. And Sergio had a very questionable season last year, but they're giving him another go. You'd have to think if he's really going to flounder it again this year, maybe he'll make it to mid-season before there's a change. But it's who do they change him with? Maybe Danny Rick will finally show his talent of old in this new and improved Visa Cash App or B or whatever the fuck it's called, which I'll get onto in a moment. Maybe Yuki, they could give him a go. Like Albon has been rumoured to have signed a pre-agreement with Red Bull for, I think, 26 maybe. Maybe they'll bring that forward and stick him in. But who knows? The elephant in the room with Red Bull, which might be the only thing that has any kind of disturbance in their season this year, is the whole Christian Horner investigation is still unresolved. But you have to assume there'll be something will happen soon, and if he does get turfed out, will it upset the apple cart enough to change their season? Possibly not. Will this radical design that Adrian Newey and his team are going for with the car, will that cause problems? Probably not, but again, we'll see. The Ferrari looked good, to be honest, in testing, and again, looks like they've taken a step forward. It seems like they might have sacrificed a little bit of their one lap pace, which was one of their strengths last year. They qualified pretty well, but then kind of dropped back in races. But it seems like they've sacrificed a little bit of the one lap pace for a better race car. And it looked like a consistent car, and definitely a good base for them to work on throughout the season. So they probably appear to be the closest rivals to Red Bull, but again, a bit behind them at this point. But again, we shall see come the first race. It'd be nice to see Sainz have a good season with him before he gets moved aside for Lewis Hamilton in 25. And it'd be nice for Charles to finally get a bit of the success he deserves. But again, the Red Bull factor might be the one massive thing standing in their way. Third fastest, it's probably it's hard to tell exactly who's third. I'm gonna say it's Aston Martin or McLaren. McLaren looked like it didn't work its tyres great. It looked like it had pretty poor degradation on its long runs. A quick car, but there are question marks there. Body language from like Norris and Piastri, they never said anything particularly negative, but you kind of got the feeling like it's not all they're expecting. and they have work to do. The Aston looked like a decent car. Again, a consistent car, but not lightning quick. But again, we shall see. Alonso seemed pretty positive. Stroll, who gives a shit about Stroll thinks. Yeah, if they can, they were kind of, what's the word? They were, what's the word I'm looking for? They looked better than they were at the beginning of last season because those around them had a slow start and they petered off then mid-season. But then they ended up at the end of the season about the fourth quickest car. They finished fifth in the championship, but it's probably the fourth quickest car. Sorry, excuse me. I think that's where they're starting from this year, as the fourth fastest in and around McLaren. The McLaren car might ultimately be quicker, but the Aston might be the more consistent car. So in qualifying, McLaren might have the edge at first, but over a race distance, maybe the Aston's the better car. Mercedes, they've done a lot of changes to the car concept. Their front wing is an interesting interpretation of the regulations, but fully legal. But again, hard to read exactly where they were. It didn't look like a bad car. Just didn't seem alarmingly quick. But again, maybe they have a good base to work on. But again, I think they're probably still behind McLaren and Aston, which will, for the team that finished second in the Constructors' Championship last year, even though they would claim that they had a bad season. Yeah, from the looks of it, they're probably Aston, McLaren, and Mercedes are probably vying for that third spot. Which one of them is ahead? As I said, it's probably McLaren at the moment. Mercedes over the whole entire season might be the ones that come out on top of that group. But again, we shall see. Early doors. Then the next kind of group of cars. Well, actually, the fourth quickest, if you base it on times, over the preseason testing, is the Visa Cash App Red B or B, whatever the fuck it's called. Now the team and the drivers are kind of playing that down. They were kind of maybe they were going for some glory runs, and other teams around them were holding back a little bit. But it does seem like a quick car. Everyone was expecting it to be a carbon copy of last year's Red Bull, but it's not. They have done their own. They've borrowed a lot of the technical aspects, the gearbox, suspension, and stuff. But the aerodynamic design is very much their own. So it seems like a decent car. It seems like they've taken a step from last year. And again, a good base to work from. So they could be the surprise of the season. It could be the Visa Cash App, whatever the fuck it's called, or B thing. Definitely taking a step forward. So they could be at the front of the kind of mid pack. Then who've got after that? Sauber. Again, not Joe did a glory run on the last day. I think he finished third overall on the third day of testing. But again, looks like a better car than last year. With a good base to work on. They might have taken a small step forward. They might be ahead of Williams now, because Williams have gone for a heavily revised car, which was kind of late to be finished, and then some of the parts didn't come in until midway through testing, and they had a bit of a slow first day. Didn't do many laps, so they seem like they're a little bit behind, on their run plan. So Sauber might have a better start, but you have to feel like the Williams of under Vels and with Alex Albon, they'll work hard and they'll move forward. But yeah, it seems quite tight between Williams and Sauber anyway. So, two teams. Well, Williams took a leap forward last year, and Sauber kind of fell backwards, but Sauber kind of moved forward, and Williams are there or thereabouts. So that's probably them. Then behind them, I feel like I'm missing it. Oh yeah, so I'll get someone there in a moment. So if I've done, there's 10 teams. So I've done Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston, Sauber, Williams, RB, yeah. So Haas, again, the Haas have been working on the problems that they had last year, which was that it was a quick enough car in qualifying, but then absolutely monstered through its tyres pretty quickly. So they've been focusing mostly on being able to work on their tyre deck. So it doesn't appear to be a massively faster car, but at least a better race car. So if they can qualify, Q2 appearances, maybe even the odd Q3, and then capitalize on qualifying in a race, they might take a step forward. They might still be last, but the elephant in the room is, from rumours around the paddock, is the car that's possibly slowest on the grid from testing is the Alpine, which I've said this before, like, I don't understand what Renault's run plan is since they came back into the sport in 2021, was it 2021, when they took over from Lotus again and became the Works Renault team, and now it's been rebranded as Alpine, which is just a sub-brand of Renault. But they just never seem to progress. I just don't understand. Like, this is a Works team, a Works manufacturer team, and not only have they stagnated, they seem to be going backwards. So if they start the season behind Haas, God, there'll be a lot of questions raised. But anyway, that's, there's not a whole lot, I said, to be gleaned. Well, there is plenty to be gleaned from winter testing, but we don't know anything for 100% for sure. Red Bull are going to dominate. Ferrari seem like they're the second team. The mix of Aston, Mercedes and McLaren just behind them. Then Visa, Cash App might be the front runners of the mid pack, with Williams and Sauber fighting just behind them, and then Haas just a nib ahead of Alpine. That's the way I'm seeing it so far. But we shall see. It's race week, and the race is on Saturday. If you weren't aware, Saturday at 3 p.m. our time, I think. Saturday because this is the first race in Bahrain, and then they go to Saudi Arabia, and I think something to do with Ramadan. I think they have to go for 7 days between or something. Some days. Excuse me for my ignorance. I'm not sure exactly why, but anyway, both this race and the race in Jeddah are both on Saturdays. That means qualifying is on Friday and practice will be on Thursday. So the season starts proper on Thursday with free practice, and we shall see. So I'll reconvene afterwards. I'll try and do a podcast on Monday after the race. I might then, as I said, leaving the F1 chat to the end of this one, I might do separate podcasts just on Formula 1 and then other podcasts for car chat, all of which I promise you will be better than this one. This one was dreadful because I've been trying to do it for the last few days and just not had the time or motivation. And I know it sounds like that again with this, but I had to finally record it, so I have nearly 40 minutes. So shorter than most of my rambles normally, but still long and shit and terrible. But if you have made it this far, again, thanks for listening. I love you as always. And until the next one, be safe, be well. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.